Hi, Martin here with another video in my series looking at getting started with OpenInsight, and in this lesson I'm going to be getting a little out of my depth as we're going to be writing some code. However, before I get into working with OpenInsight, I want to spend a couple of minutes looking at the two areas where application developers can write the basic plus code. We very briefly touched on using the event editor window to create a few lines of code to operate the tab control based on the page value in the tab control lesson previously. We'll take a closer look at the event handler window during this lesson. However, the other tool is the system editor, and this is where professional application developers and programmers will spend most of their time. And it's run up using the system editor button here, and if I just open up an example program, this is a program that's used to create an OIPI report. But this area is used for creating programs of all types, from small, relatively insignificant programs to long, complex programs that are used throughout your application. We will be taking a closer look at the system editor in a later lesson, and Revelation have some system editor specific videos on their website as well. So there's plenty of information to learn about this particular tool. I mentioned the system editor for one reason, and that's because what you will learn today is fine as it is, but in the real world you'd be more beneficial in including some of the code in what we call a commuter module, and again more on that in a later lesson. But in a nutshell, commuter module routines are large programs that are called from a window, and they usually contain all or most of the code to make the window operate and interact with other forms, the operating system, hardware, etc. In today's lesson, we will write code that will swap an image based on the record being viewed. This will display an image of the patient, or an avatar as I'm using in this lesson, and this code will be contained in a single event handler on the form, and it will change when an edit line value changes. However, we will also, in the real world, want to run that same code on a save event, a delete event, a clear event, etc. And using my method means that we'll have to copy and then maintain the same piece of code in multiple places, which is not a great idea. Especially if you've got the same piece of code in multiple places on multiple forms, and you've got to maintain all of those, remember where they are, you're going to miss some. So please bear in mind that when I create the event handler to swap out the image, I'm not using the most efficient method, and not one that is necessarily recommended, but one that is convenient for those of us who are just starting out with OpenInsight. The good news is that Revelation have a routine to convert a Windows event to run from a commuter module, and this is also something that I hope to look at a later date when we come to explore the commuter routines in more detail. Anyway, enough of the waffle, let's get back to our application, and we'll just close out of the system editor. And we go into the forms designer, and we'll open up our patient entry record that we've been working on. Now this looks slightly different to the form when we left it last, because I've just moved a few things around. I prefer the hospital number to be above the title, and I think I've got forenames and surnames around the wrong way, and I've just made the image a bit smaller. But other than that, I've just changed the look and the feel. I haven't really done anything substantial to the form. Right, the main controls that we're going to be interested in today is the bitmap control. Now one of the things I have done, I've just created a little bitmap picture, a default picture, which I've put into here. So created the entity and then just found it within the drop down and added that. So that basically puts my little image there. I've also got the edit line that we dropped on earlier on. Now I'm actually going to drop on a different one, because what I want to do is to show you how to use the data aware controls and how that's obviously going to affect how you work with OpenInsight. So if I just grab a data bound edit line, this is the green one, and we'll drop one of those onto the form. Now it immediately prompts me for the database association. It's assuming I'm going to be working with OpenInsight tables, and it assumes that the table is going to be the MP patient table, because that's the one that most of the controls in this form are linked to. However, it doesn't know what column. Now I could pick one, but I don't have an image path option in here. So what we'll do is we'll just add a new one, which is image path. And if I now click on details, I get a little pop-up that comes up. This column does not exist. Do you want to create a new column? Yes, I do. And that's now created it with a data type of varchar, and we could go in here and change that if we wanted to. It's not a key field or anything. And from within the Forms Designer, I can click the Details button and I can go and have a look at the attributes for that particular column. So if I wanted to, I could go into Description and say, this is the path to my patient image. We'll just OK that. And now I can change anything else that I want to in here. I'm happy with those, so I'll just click OK and OK again. And we've now got a data bound form. It's dropped a label on there, which I don't necessarily want, so we'll just remove that for the moment. And what I will do though is I'm just going to align these to the top. I'll delete the old one that we don't want anymore. And I'll just align those to the left as well. But we do need to rename this, because I don't want this to be image path. I want this to be EDL underscore image path, because we're going to be calling that within our code. Now I do actually need an additional edit line, and I don't want that to be data bound, so I'll just drop that on the bottom of the form here for the moment. And we're just going to rename this one as EDL underscore default image. And this is going to hold a path to our default image. We'll get to that in just a moment. Our bitmap, we want to make sure that we have named it BMP underscore image. Mine is, so that's okay. Just check that yours is, and that wasn't something that I did previously. And we also want to drop on a button onto the form as well. And we'll do Control T. And this particular button, if you remember in the last lesson, it was 20 by 20. So we'll just move that over to 20 by 20, and we will Tools, Size Equally to minimum height. So that gives us the same height as the edit line there. And I think what I'll do here is just Control Right to right align that, which will keep it nice. And then I can just resize the edit line accordingly. It might be quite nice to group these together. So what I'll do is I go up here to the group box control and just drop that on to my form. Let's just move that up slightly. And we'll change the text on there to be something like patient picture. That'll do. And we'll just change this to GRP underscore patient picture as well. Okay, just come off, and then we've got quite a nice little group box. It just groups those controls together quite nicely for us. Now what we'll do is we'll go into the button and we'll drill down to our MP folder button that we created in the last lesson. There we go. And we'll change that to a 3-state button, and we'll OK that, and we've got our button on the form there. That's quite nice. Could probably move that over a little bit more. That will do. Now on the edit line down here, this is our default image edit line. We want to add in a specific path to the image. Now on my system here, if I drill down to where I've got my images stored, I've got a background image here. If I just go into the properties of that image, then we can see the actual path to the image, which is C RevSoft 92F Clinic Data Images. I don't need the entire path in here. All I need is the /clinic data images. So we'll copy that. Just come out of here.